peoples and governments. Let us fashion together a new world order. In 1994, Kissinger stated that the New World Order cannot happen without U.S. participation, as we are the most significant single component. Yes, there will be a New World Order, and it will force the United States to change its perceptions. This New World Order goal is supposedly for the good of all mankind, as Nelson Mandela affirmed in the Philadelphia Inquirer in October of 1994, when he said, "The New World Order that is in the making must focus on the creation of a world of democracy, peace, and prosperity for all." Democratic leader Richard Gephardt in the Wall Street Journal said, "We can see beyond the present shadows of war in the Middle East to a new world order where the strong work together to deter and stop aggression." This was precisely Franklin Roosevelt's and Winston Churchill's vision for peace for the post-war period. Even President Mubarak of Egypt is quoted in the New York Times saying that the renewal of the Non-Proliferation Treaty was described as important, quote, "for the welfare of the whole world and the New World Order." Also, before the United Nations in 1979, Cuban dictator Fidel Castro said, "We must establish a new world order based on justice, on equity, and on peace." Mikhail Gorbachev, the former leader of the Soviet Union, made this rather disturbing association when he said, "We are moving toward a new world order, the world of communism. We shall never turn off that road." Perhaps most troubling of all is this quote from Adolf Hitler during the Second World War, who said, "National Socialism will use its own revolution for the establishing of a new world order." Such disturbing statements about the New World Order are not confined to Hitler. Historian Walter Mills, writing about World War I, described the efforts of Colonel Mandell House, the chief advisor to President Wilson, speaking of his hidden motive for involving America in the war. He wrote, "The colonel's sole justification for preparing such a batch of blood for his countrymen was his hope of establishing a new world order of peace and security." The Bible says, "The day of the Lord will come just like a thief in the night. For while they are saying peace and security, then destruction will come upon them suddenly, like labor pains upon a woman with child, and they will not escape." The labor pains or birth pangs a woman suffers during childbirth come suddenly, but not all at once. The contractions are usually spread apart at first and can continue for many hours. But as the labor reaches its climax, the contractions quicken until they come one right after another. This is the picture given in the Bible of how catastrophic events will progress as the day of the Lord approaches. The starting gun for these contractions seems to be the cry of peace and security, as we saw with Colonel House and the First World War. In fact, during World War I, Nicholas Murray Butler, who ironically would win the Nobel Prize for Peace, gave this mysterious address before the Union League of Philadelphia on November 27, 1915. He said, "The old world order died with the setting of that day's sun, and a new world order is being born while I speak, with birth pangs so terrible that it seems almost incredible that life could come out of such fearful suffering and such overwhelming sorrow." An estimated 16 million lives were lost during World War I. But the conflict to come would make the Great War pale by comparison. While the numbers vary, it is now estimated that some 50 million lives were lost as a result of World War II, a birth pang which began with a similar declaration of peace for the sake of security. British Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain met with Adolf Hitler in 1938 to draft the Munich Accord for the purpose of supposedly providing security for Czechoslovakia and to assure the peace of Europe. Chamberlain arrived back in London with this historic announcement.
This morning I had another talk with the German Chancellor, Herr Hitler. And here is the paper which bears his name upon it as well as mine. We regard the agreement signed last night and the Anglo-German naval agreement as symbolic of the desire of our two peoples never to go to war with one another again.
I believe it is peace for our time, he said. Go home and get a nice quiet sleep. So confident were the British, they posted signs saying, "Don't mind Hitler, take your holiday." 6 months later, Hitler violated the agreement when the Nazis invaded Czechoslovakia. In less than a year, World War II was officially underway. Chamberlain's declaration of peace is today considered one of the greatest blunders of the 20th century. Can these events have been a foreshadowing of things to come? You be the judge as you consider this speech given by President George Bush Sr. when he spoke of the New World Order before the United States Congress in 1991.
A new world order where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law.
Some find it interesting that President Bush made this declaration on September the 11th, 1991, exactly 10 years prior to the destructive attack on America. But Bush had spoken of the New World Order a year before. Concerning the crisis in the Persian Gulf, he said, "Out of these troubled times, a new world order can emerge." These words he spoke on September the 11th, 1990, 11 years prior to America's tragedy. Can all these things be merely coincidence? And why would world government and a desire for peace and security bring about destruction? Jesus said, "My peace I give unto you, not as the world gives, give I unto you." Can it be that the world peace pursued by kings and rulers is somehow contrary to the peace of Christ? James Warburg of the Council on Foreign Relations, while speaking to the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on February 17, 1950, said, "We shall have world government whether or not we like it. The question is only whether world government will be achieved by consent or by conquest." An early warning against the tone of this movement was sounded by Congressman Larry P. McDonald, who even named some of those he deemed responsible when he said, "The drive of the Rockefellers and their allies is to create a one-world government, combining supercapitalism and communism under the same tent, all under their control. Do I mean conspiracy? Yes, I do. I am convinced there is such a plot, international in scope, generations old in planning, and incredibly evil in intent." Arthur Schlesinger, Jr., in the July-August 1995 issue of Foreign Affairs said, "We are not going to achieve a new world order without paying for it in blood as well as words and money." Decades earlier, famed author H.G. Wells, who wrote such works as The Time Machine and The Invisible Man, was also a member of a controversial group known as the Fabian Socialist Society. While his science fiction books are well known, Wells also wrote a little-known work titled The New World Order, published in 1939. In it he states, countless people will hate the New World Order and will die protesting against it.